fun.
With Matt George.
Says that we are live. So we are live.
And Leo Beas.
Cowbell Kingdom's podcast.
Here's Matt and Leo.
Podcast. We're doing things a little bit differently here. Live from Stockton and in studio setup now, and a new deal for Leo and I, moving away from the just my living room and his place. We've moved now to the KXVS studios, 92.1 FM. If you're listening online and you're in the Stockton area, you can definitely join us there if you're in your vehicle. If not, we still have all the ways for you to reach us, whether it's on the video format or the audio format. We got it all right here for you. But excited to be here and plenty to talk about. We took last week off in preparations for coming in here in the studio. And before we dive in, big thanks to everybody here for hosting us and putting everything together. Leo, it's pretty awesome to be able to have the ability to come on the airwaves and bring the CK podcast into people's vehicles.
Yes, sir. I am super excited, Matt. Thank you for making the drive and just from Sacramento. I know it was a pain in the butt.
It's beyond Sacramento.
But you got here. Thank you to Dustin, our producer. I'm really hoping that this show really becomes even better, and we elevate as far as level and as far as all the podcasts in Sacramento.
Yeah, there's plenty of stuff certainly to talk about. I'm not going to waste any time on rush hour traffic because I'm already wired up enough as it is just from driving through it. But y'all need to find another time to leave your work than 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the afternoon because the world revolves around me, right? But yeah, we're gonna talk specifically with the Sacramento Kings. We'll talk really two major things involving the Kings, which is their upcoming draft, and Cowbell Kingdom's released a bunch of draft breakdowns over the past week and a half. If you haven't seen them, go and check them out now, cowbellkingdom.com. You can see them all. They're also all over social media, Twitter, Facebook, doesn't matter. It is all there. Even links on Instagram, I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
so you can go and check them out there, and then check those out and bring that knowledge here with us, or wait to check them out till after our show, and then you can go and kind of understand more of what we are talking about. So we'll talk a little bit about a couple pieces in particular that we like to potentially come in and be good fits with the Sacramento Kings. We've talked about it time and time again, Leo, about a lot of the future of the Kings hangs on this draft specifically. I mean, the offseason is built in stages where there's the draft, there's free agency, there's contract signings, this and that and this and that. But the draft specifically for the Sacramento Kings is huge, and specifically for Vlade Divac's job, it's huge. So they really need to strike gold in the draft, and we'll definitely be talking about that.
Yeah, and at worst case, I think the Kings will get 8 and 10, but they might have a chance to get something better, maybe 6, 5. It just really depends. And you're right. The last week we have broken down Laura Marketing, Dennis Smith Jr., Frank Ntilikina, and Jonathan Isaac, who all of these prospects are all top 10 prospects, and they are all on Sacramento's radar, Matt. I truly believe that. They're very talented. And now it's just, like you said, what will Vlade do? Will he stay at 10? Will he try to get more picks like he did last year? Or maybe get a veteran with that pick, package that up? We don't know. But I tell you what, the future is bright, and it's exciting times right now, Matt.
Well, it is bright, and there's things on the horizon that could certainly point to good things ahead. Mm-hmm. However, with that, there comes a certain level of risk. Now, the risk has been diminished a little bit by the fact that the Kings do have, or hopefully, knock on wood with the NBA draft lottery coming up here very soon, but hopefully they will have two top 10 first-round picks, which takes a little bit of the pressure off of you as a GM. I mean, you'd like to strike gold with both of them, but it's almost easier in my mind in some way to have picks like 7 and 10 or 8 and 10 rather than just number 4 or number 5, because if you miss, which we've seen the Kings do time and time again, then basically that's it. You struck out and you have no kind of hope of a backup. The hope of the backup that the Kings had, they actually had 2 in Malachi Richardson and Skal Labissiere. Can you imagine if Papagiannis was the only pick that the Kings had in the last draft. We didn't get Scal, and they didn't get Malachi.
Terrible.
Like, things would be doom and gloom to the utmost degree. But because Vlade had those two pieces to make things easier, that certainly helped things, and I think they're trying to do that today. Or this year. We'll talk about that today. We'll also talk about there's a couple pieces that are currently on the Kings roster that are on the cusp of either testing free agency or see if the Kings are going to offer them contracts or anything like that. So there's a couple names that we can talk about, particularly at the point guard spot. Darren Collison and Ty Lawson are the two major names to talk about whether or not we think that the Kings should potentially offer a contract, try to re-sign them, and what they're certainly looking for. We'll talk about that as well. Also, NBA playoff breakdown, because that's what's going on. And then we have a nice guest in the house today. He's going to be calling in actually here in 3 minutes, so we're going to just kind of bide our time until then. We're really looking forward to talking to him. His name is Mr. James Holas of Bballbreakdown. So he's going to join us. Definitely going to be talking some playoffs with him. Maybe dapple into the draft a little bit as well. James is a friend of the show, so we look forward to spending some time with him. And again, that'll be in just a couple of minutes, so you don't have to wait long for that. In the meantime, though, before we get to that, without breaking down the games too much, because we'll get to that in just a little bit with James specifically, as a whole, you look at last year's playoffs, and for the most part, they were relatively dull until we got the 7-game series in the finals. So you move on to this year's playoffs. In your mind, Leo, better, worse, boring? Have you been entertained? What have you looked forward to most, or what have you thought about these playoffs so far?
Very entertaining, Matt. Last year, the first round was awful.
Terrible.
And this year, we had a bunch of good games, a bunch of competitive games. I was unhappy that the Bucks couldn't close out Game 6. You know, they had a really good chance to really close that game and send it to Game 7. And I really believe that if it would have been Bucks, Cavs, it would have been a lot more competitive, because just simply on matchups. And
you hear the ringers.
There it is.
You know what that
James
means.
Holas.
So yeah, we'll revisit that in just a little bit. But that sounds like the ringer, which means our good buddy James is on the line. James, are you there?
What's up, man?
Hey, James Holas joining us from Bballbreakdown. Matt, George, and Leo Beas with you. James, we want to thank you for hopping on so early and taking the time to join us here.
Oh man, thanks for having me on. It's a nice distraction from watching the Celtics get their heads kicked in.
And I've kind of adopted the Boston Celtics as a team this playoff, so I can certainly relate to that, and I understand and I feel that pain. Leo and I were just talking and breaking down how the first round of this playoffs has been a lot more entertaining, or it was a lot more entertaining than the first round of last year's playoffs, and we're seeing some actual good matchups. Like seeing the Utah Jazz get past the Clippers, and just seeing entertaining games as a whole. James, would you say these playoffs so far have been much more entertaining and much more watchable in your eyes compared to last year?
I'm trying to think about the first round last year. Let me see, Pistons and Cavs, and yeah, I guess nothing really stands out from last year. It was 2 years ago we had a really good first round. Last year was kind of janky. So yeah, I'd say this year is definitely a better first round. The first round was pretty entertaining this year. Yeah.
Okay, you're very familiar with the Celtics, right? I think you're a Celtics fan, correct?
I am, yeah.
So my question to you is, in those first two games against Chicago, a lot of people, said the Celtics, I feel like this team has a lot of flaws, blah, blah, blah. Were you concerned in the first two games, not just as a fan, but as an objective reporter?
Yeah, I was concerned because Boston has some very glaring flaws that are going to be fatal flaws. They don't protect the rim, and they have no other creator besides Isaiah Thomas. I mean, these are known. They don't rebound either. So those are the fatal flaws that, of course, a team like Cleveland is going to exploit, or like a team like the Wizards right now are exploiting. Yes, I was concerned because this is the year that Boston had to get that first round, everyone was saying. And, you want to show some kind of development, some growth every year to year. So to go out in the first round, as the 1 seed getting beat by the 8 seed would have been terribly embarrassing. And, that's those first two games. But I just thought as everything Isaiah was going through, The team was going through a very emotional time. And obviously, as you can see, this series, bad starts, slow starts kind of doomed the team. So I was concerned. I was really glad and it sucks that it took Rondo getting hurt for them to get on track. And because I think now Chicago fans can always say, if Rondo hadn't gotten hurt, we would have,
Yeah, and that was my question. Do you feel like if Rondo would have been healthy, the Bulls would have advanced?
I mean, I want to say no. I want to say that Boston obviously was a deeper, more disciplined team. I want to say that, but I mean, we'll never know, and it's always going to be in the back of my mind, kind of. So even I said it after those first two games. I had a pretty big rant on Twitter, kind of just a cathartic release, and I said, you know what? Even if we come back and win, it's almost still like you're the bigger guy. You still got punched in the face a couple times by little guys. So even if you win, you're still pretty embarrassed because you're supposed to win anyway. You should have got punched in the face a couple times.
I appreciate your putting your bias on the side when it comes to the Celtics. So allow me to exploit mine. I was tired and constantly being flooded with people who knew that I was a supporter of the Boston Celtics, or not necessarily a fan, but they've been the team that I'm rooting for, and for this really reason alone, James, they are the team in my mind that has the best chance in the Eastern Conference to stop LeBron James, and all I'm rooting for is an NBA Finals without LeBron James in it, and whether that's a personal thing I have against LeBron, I don't think it is. Some people seem to believe it is. I just want to see something different. I like different, and what the Boston Celtics have been giving us is different, or at least during the regular season. So I was flooded with a bunch of people with these hot take cannons of, man, the Celtics are being exposed. The Celtics just aren't that good of a team. Man, I knew this stuff all along. To me, I thought it was just a matchup thing. Whereas when you look at that, or when you look at the team, James, you look at Boston, you look at how they match up with the Chicago Bulls. Completely healthy, was it really that Boston isn't that strong of a team and they have those major flaws, or is it really Chicago in a lot of ways just matched up really well with Boston?
You know what? It's funny that because Tom Haberstroh said the exact same thing on Zach Lowe's podcast after those first two games. He made the same comment about maybe Boston's just not that good. Of course, Boston's that good.
Number one seed.
You hit the nail on the head. It's matchups. I mean, it's like we saw Dallas when they won 67 games, and they got beat by the by the Warriors back in 07.
Right.
We saw that. It's about matchups, and so it was a really bad matchup. A guy like Bobby Portis coming off the bench were killing us. Robin Lopez, right to the heart of the biggest problem Boston has, that can't rebound. He just was living in the lane at the rim. We have no shot blocking. So Robin Lopez again was just
those are flaws.
crushing. So, I mean, yeah, Rajon Rondo was getting into the lane and causing problems after almost being benched and cut last season. So it was just matchups, and obviously Isaiah Thomas's tragedy at the same time probably cast a pall over the team, and they're a little shell shocked. So yeah, it was just matchups. Boston is a good team. I keep hearing a lot about this is the worst one seed ever and all. It's whatever, right? Somebody won the one. It was us, and so we got to hear it now.
Right, and Boston, it's safe to say Boston was exposed by Cleveland towards the end of the regular season when Cleveland really thrashed them and put pedal to the metal there to really establish dominance of, hey, we are still the Cleveland Cavaliers, we still have LeBron James, and even though we're the number 2 seed, we are still expected to win the East. Is this the first time in recent memory, James, that you can picture a number 1 seed almost being an underdog story? Because it seems like that's really the mantra that the Celtics have taken on. They seem to be the underdogs because of Isaiah Thomas, because of the tragedy of his sister, and then just because of how their team has fared so far.
I mean, no doubt. Anyone who watches, if Boston gets to the series with Washington and they end up meeting with the Cavs, no doubt Boston's the underdog.
Right.
I'm trying to think of a case where maybe the top seed had a player missing with injury and they came back, so they lost a lot of games. Like a 2 or 3 seed missed the guy for most of the season and he came back. I can't think of a case where the number 1 seed is the underdog, but this is the age of LeBron, man. LeBron changes the whole paradigm. Mm-hmm. That's what I was saying today. Somebody said that the East was weak. The East isn't weak. LeBron James just makes everyone look weak. Same thing with Golden State. Right now, I can't think of a time when the best 2 teams in the East Conference were just so much better than the next best teams. And that's all it is right now. Because I think Boston's a very quality team. I think they played the Spurs in a competitive series. I think they played Houston in a competitive series. And I hate to say it, but when they meet the Cavs, they're probably going to get crushed. They're probably going to get crushed. LeBron James is just on another level. He's a different kind of animal.
So you mentioned matchups, right? Do you feel like the Celtics match up better with the Wizards? And do you feel like they will beat the Wizards?
I think they'll still beat the Wizards. This game notwithstanding, I think Boston's deeper, and they usually, they're pretty disciplined. Like Otto Porter went bonkers to start this game, and Bogdanovich came out firing. John Wall didn't even get loose until there was like a 20-something point game in the third. So I can't count those things again. Now the only issue I do have is that finally Scott Brooks figured out how to target Isaiah Thomas. Whoever Isaiah's guarding, they're just going to him, and it obviously paid big dividends. So I still think the Celtics will win this series. I said Boston in 6 originally, so I'm not. This is a bad loss, it's an ugly loss, but I don't think it's indicative of how the series is going to go.
Isaiah Thomas is a fan favorite here in Sacramento, and every time you see him actually score a basket, all you hear ringing around the greater Sacramento area is, well, he could have been doing that in purple and black and silver, but curse you, Pete D'Alessandro, for letting him go for nothing. I'm sure a lot of Phoenix Suns fans can see the same thing or feel the same way. Specifically with Isaiah Thomas, it didn't really work in Sacramento. Nobody really in Sacramento expected him to be as good as he is now when he was here. But there's no hiding that Isaiah needs the ball in his hands to be as effective as he is. So if the Celtics aren't quite there with the pieces they have currently, and they want to try and add in another bigger piece, a bigger all-star to maybe partner with Isaiah, is that something that you feel Isaiah could benefit from, or could taking the ball out of his hands potentially hurt his game?
Well, it's never a bad idea to add more talent. And I think Isaiah would probably say to himself, too, he would like someone to take some of the load off of him. Because he has to do so much offensively and so much in ISO. And, everything starts with him on offense there. I'm almost positive, if you ask Isaiah, would you rather put up 30 points a game and win 53 games, or put up, 22, 23 points a game, and you guys win 60. Isaiah, let's be real. Isaiah's not going to say, "Oh no, I want my 30 points a game." Right? The goal is to be the best team you can. Adding another star just helps that. So, would it hurt his individual numbers and his stats? Sure. Is that a good thing? I think that'd be a good thing. Because right now, I think we're seeing max Isaiah, and it's just not enough. You just need more. So, no matter what his numbers look like, I think he would be much better served with a Jimmy Butler or a Paul George.
Let's talk a little bit about the West. Do you think that the Jazz will win at least 2 games or even a game against the Warriors?
So I've been of the notion that if any team could challenge, especially last season, I think if any team could challenge Golden State, maybe the healthy Utah Jazz. And even this year, I think out of their 7 games they played in the last 2 years, I think 4 of them, were decided by like 7 points or less, that's a pretty impressive thing to say considering it's Golden State. Mm-hmm. Now the other 3 were blowouts, and of course now they got Kevin Durant. It's a whole different ball game. I hope the Jazz can win 1 just for the sake of I guess like their own pride. But I don't know, man. George Hill's out tonight, and the way things are looking, I don't know. It might just be a clean sweep.
Do you think that the Jazz will keep Gordon Hayward? That's his name, right?
Yeah, Gordon Hayward. I think
Hayward.
This is the thing, right? Because they can offer him another year and a little more money, right? I guess. See, is he going to make the? Is he eligible for that Supermax? I don't know why. I don't know this. I should probably know this if he's eligible, but he's probably not, though, because I think he has to be All NBA and All-Star like 2 out of the 3 seasons before you got the contract. So I don't think he's eligible. I think so, man. It seems like he's found a home there, and not to sound stereotypical, but he's a Utah Jazz kind of player. He works hard. He seems like he's loved there. He's he is the face of the franchise, and so sure, even though we know Rudy's the backbone of that defense and it's just as important, I think so. Rudy got his money, and I would think he'd want to stay there.
I ask you because obviously Brad Stevens is coaching the Celtics, and there's a little connection there, and you guys have pieces. I don't know, James. It just seems like Boston would be a good place for a guy like that, but I don't know.
No, he definitely would, and Boston has a lot of tough decisions this summer. They really do, right? Because they got guys who need to get paid, and Avery Bradley is coming up. I think next year. Him and Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah is eligible for his extension this year. I think Avery's going to play this year too. Smart that's coming up soon too. They got a lot of decisions to make, and like when they start paying these guys, that means all that cap space they had looking for another star is going to be gone. And so they can't pay everybody. They really can't. Isaiah's gonna, do you pay Isaiah $25 million a year if you're, you're a second tier kind of contender? So they got a lot of decisions to make. But I know that a player like Gordon Hayward, who I think is right there, Jimmy Butler and Paul George, I think are that second tier below LeBron James. No, I'm sorry, it goes LeBron and then Kevin Durant like a half step. Then you got Jimmy Butler and Paul George. And I think Gordon is almost in that third kind of tier as far as he's a top flight wing. So if Boston can sign him up, and I guess they probably pay Isaiah, and you got tough decisions to make elsewhere, but that's not a bad core. Al Horford, Gordon Hayward, and Isaiah Thomas.
James, is it inevitable that we will be getting the three-peat of the Warriors and the Cavs? Can anybody anywhere stop either of these teams?
Only thing that can stop them is injuries. So I'm knocking on wood. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but I mean, look at the Cavs. All season long, people complained about, and it was true. Their defense was abysmal. They just did not look engaged. They looked lethargic. They looked kind of like, that had the championship hangover all season. It was very true. And now in the playoffs, they're just, after the first round tune-up with the Pacers, which went very well. Pacers I think really kind of extended them and made them work. Now look what's happening right now. They're toying with the Raptors, and I love the Celtics and their depth and how hard they're going to work. They just don't have an answer for LeBron James. And in the West, you got 4 All-Stars, you got 2 MVP type players. I love what the Spurs have done. And, it was a testament to them to win 61 games with just pretty much Kawhi and a bunch of role players. That's what they had, but they're not going to beat Golden State. I love Houston, what they've done this year. A real surprise of the league. They're not beating Golden State. So, no, it's pretty inevitable.
Is, the narrative that we heard towards the end of the season just over and over again was all about resting players, whether or not these teams that pretty much knew that they were going to be in playoff races, whether or not they were going to take the time they needed to sit their players. We saw it a lot, actually, with LeBron James and the Cavaliers. Does that narrative kind of falter, or is dirt kind of thrown in the way of LeBron James and the Cavaliers about resting players during the regular season when you see them, for example, sweep in the opening round and have something like 4, 5, or 6 days off before playing their next game?
I don't think so, because here's the thing. When we talk about resting players in the season, everything, every bump, every bruise, every minute is cumulative. And so it's really easy to say, well, hey, after the first round they got 5, 6 days off. Why are you resting guys in January? It all matters. And I think we've seen in the postseason at times, we've seen what I call a player when he pops. He's not poops, he pops, where he gets, his body is so run down that, sure, you get a day or two off in between to rest, but it's just not enough. And like he's reached the end of that, it's just too much. And we've seen players just be so gassed. Like, I think we saw Westbrook like that in the playoffs this year. He went so hard, and you tip your hat to him because he had to. And then I think we saw against Houston, he was so fatigued. Even if they bumped his minutes up a little bit, it was just too much. So I think I get it. I get it. It's a dicey situation because fans are going to play to see these star players. Franchises want to win championships. So when you got, it sounded crazy. They were resting guys like in the first week. I think that was the Cavs rested somebody like the first week. And then I do think there's a problem when teams like Sacramento are resting guys at the end of the season, because what are you doing?
Right.
You should give your fans a show. That makes no sense at all. That pissed me off. But as far as contenders and playoff teams, every bit helps. Every bit helps. And like you can see, like how last year in the playoffs, in the finals, LeBron James seemed to get fresher and fresher. Golden State, on the other hand, had pushed so hard to win 73 games. I think they really kind of were running on fumes in the finals, and it showed. So So I'm all about teams getting rest for their guys.
You mentioned Russell Westbrook there, and this last little bit for you, James. Again, appreciate you joining us and spending the time here. Russell Westbrook was my pick, and it was an easy pick for MVP. A lot of people have James Harden. Leo is one of them. Some people even had Kawhi in the conversation. But James, to me, ran into a buzzsaw in Russell Westbrook making history. So I'm curious, who was your pick, or is your pick, for the MVP?
I mean, you just said it, man. You're a smart guy. And Leo, sorry, buddy, you backed the wrong horse. I get what people want to say, winning matters and all that. The NBA is about entertainment, and I think there was no show more compelling this season than Russell Westbrook and his chase of history. And the narrative of the whole thing, narrative shouldn't. It does matter. People tune in because Russell Westbrook and his team were abandoned by a superstar, and he was defined in the face of that. He showed that. It's funny because when I watched the press conference when he signed his extension, and he comes up in the white shirt and it looks so crisp. And the white shirt, like the hero riding in wearing white. And ever since that day, he took the franchise on his back, and he said it himself. He said, "Hey, I leave it on the court, and sometimes good results, sometimes not so good, but I always give it effort." I think the franchise needed that. I think the NBA needed that, and he was my pick also. Russell Westbrook was amazing this season. I get that Harden was so efficient, but I mean, I think if you look at the plus-minus numbers, his team performed almost, pretty well with him off the court too, because they have so many weapons. So I know the advanced stat people are gonna, hem and haw about Russell Westbrook, his efficiency, but all the big numbers love him. All those numbers they talk about, a lot of these numbers love them. And somebody tried to tell me that they loved him because he broke the metrics.
Right.
His usage was so high, and it wasn't fair. But guess what? The man's a machine, and he did that. So he earned it. So I'm with you. I think Russell Westbrook definitely deserves MVP this year.
And rightfully so. There are a lot of James Harden fans that feel upset or cheated, and there certainly is an argument to make for James Harden. What he's done this season has been astronomical, phenomenal. I'm looking at it selfishly, and I'm curious if you're the same way, James. I'm looking at it towards, this is now the second time that you can make an argument that James Harden is going to be snubbed as an MVP. He's not going to want that to happen a third time. Could we see an even better or an even more intense version of James Harden in the near future?
I think that they're going to hone their roster and add more pieces. I think as good as Houston was this year, next year they're going to tweak the roster even more, and he's getting better and better. So definitely, and I think also I believe the media, they know exactly what you just said. They know that the first time he lost it to Steph Curry, this one from what I'm hearing, what's that website? Either the Dream Shake or Red 93 or whatever. One of those websites. They actually ran they asked enough writers and everything, and they got 60% of the writers to come back, and they said it's almost impossible for us not to win it. So I think after this year, we might see people will call it a makeup vote for Harden, but he'll earn it. He'll get his. He's going to get his next couple years.
James, thank you so much for taking the time with us. We appreciate you jumping on and your knowledge, and I'm right there in the trenches with you, buddy. We need Celtics to pull this out because they're just a fun story.
It is a fun story, but I've been very kind of apathetic about them. I've been very zen because I look at this roster and I like it, but I know that it's not fully formed and know they have a way to go. So thanks for having me on, and we're pulling for them, but I just know that the best is yet to come for Boston.
Yes, sir, James. Thank you so much, buddy. Have a great one.
All right, fellas. Peace.
All right, that is Mr. James Holm of the B-Ball
Breakdown.
Bball Breakdown. I almost called it B-Ball Nation, which I know is not right. Really quick before we move on, I want to let you know that WimZR is a mobile application that allows people to connect days, weeks, and even months prior to arriving at music festivals, travel destinations, sporting events, business conferences, and so much more worldwide. Connect in open forums and one-on-one get traveling recommendations from locals, and travelers view event details and guest lists, and you can purchase event tickets. So that's WimZR, spelled W-I-M, then capital
WimZR.
Z-R. WimZR. So that's how you pronounce it. WimZR Connect. Check that out.
It's a local app, actually, and his name is John Parlow. He was part of KJ's team that saved the Kings.
All right,
and he started that that app.
As more of the grassroots as we can get, we like to spread that love around. We actually, I think it was this last weekend that we celebrated Here We Stayed Day, or the day that it was announced that the Kings stayed in Sacramento. So some pretty awesome stuff, some history to go about that. Well, we spent the first half an hour really talking NBA playoffs and everything around Sacramento or away from Sacramento. Let's focus on Sacramento specifically, and we'll really dive in to the draft here. Leo, you and the Cowboy Kingdom team have worked feverishly to release these draft prospects, and you're looking at, you mentioned Frank Ntilikina. Wow, let me just not,
Frank Ntilikina.
Let me not swallow that again. Frank Ntilikina. Jeez. We got Frank. There's Jonathan Isaac that you talked about as well. A couple other breakdowns that you had on them. There's so much, and if you watch the breakdowns, you can see each bit and the pros and cons to each one and why you think they could be good fits. Is there one or two in particular that you feel like that would be the number one top of my board guy?
Yeah, look, Matt, obviously we know that the Kings need a point guard and a small forward, but the Kings are a bad team, and when you're a bad team, you need to take the best player available, period.
Right.
If you ask any NBA expert, GM, that's the typical answer, right? Don't draft by need, because if you do that, bad things usually happen. And the more I looked at Lauri Markkanen from Arizona, 7 feet tall, to me, he is Ryan Anderson on steroids. I kid you not. This guy has mobility. He can jump. He can play above the rim. He's 19 years old. He is, at the age of 19, an elite shooter already. His stroke is so pure, it's crazy. Like, if you add this guy with Buddy Hield, you have two very, very good shooters. And, Scal's a good shooter, Malachi's a good shooter, but, there's good shooters and then there are great shooters. I consider Buddy a great shooter, believe it or not. So this guy Markkanen, to me, is too much of a talent to pass up. And if he's available at number 8, which I highly doubt, because I really think that the T-Wolves at 6 will take him, to mix him up with Wiggins and Cat, that's a deadly 3-man team.
Right.
But like I said in the breakdown, a 3-man rotation of Willie Cauley-Stein, Scal, and Markkanen would be crazy and must watch, because that tandem of young, explosive, good athletes, it's great to see, dude.
Yeah, and I have 3 mock drafts open right in front of me here, and all 3 of them have Markkanen going number 6 to the T-Wolves, and you can certainly understand why. I understand everything you're saying about him, and I appreciate his game. And when it comes to big men, you've seen the best teams in this league have to have some kind of stretch big in order to be successful. That's just the way the game is played. So that's what makes Markkanen even more.
It's the new NBA, man.
Right, and that's what it is, and that's what you need to. You need to be a big man that can shoot, and the best big men are the ones that have been able to adapt and to add jump shots to their game.
But he's 7 feet tall with mobility.
Exactly.
That's unheard of.
And he's going to add weight as well.
Exactly.
I mean, he's got a way to go. So I understand the highs on this guy. The worries that I have specifically with him and with a lot of players in this draft is it's a good shooter's draft in a lot of ways. And I'm worried. Well, let me put it this way: the players that are being maybe pushed more towards what the Kings may be interested in are more offensive focused. I worry about that because time and time again we've seen in the draft teams draft shooters, and not just necessarily the Sacramento Kings, but a lot of teams. It's really hard to get a shooter to make an impact right away. A lot of times they almost regress from where they were at because they're just getting to know the speed of the game, when to take a shot, how to get themselves open.
Yep, I agree.
That's things that I worry about with a pick like Markkanen. Now, I totally agree with you. You have to take the best available. If he's on the board at 8, if he slides that far, I think Vlade and the Kings would be ridiculous not to take him.
Yeah.
However, my pick, and in my mind, there's no chance that he's going to slide this far. But if he was, even above Markkanen, would be Fox. And I understand exactly what you're saying about you got to take the best available. I get that. But the point guard spot for the Sacramento Kings has plagued them for so long. It's very similar to how, remember before Rudy Gay, that the Sacramento Kings just could not find a small forward to find their life. Like John Salmons was literally the best that they could get.
Don't talk about John, man.
Hey, I like John, but that was the best that they could get. And then we got Rudy Gay, and it was like we won a championship. Like we have a legitimate small forward. Now you can make the argument since Isaiah Thomas wasn't around long enough for really me to feel to make the argument, but really since Mike Bibby, have the Kings had that like point guard who can score the basketball but can also run the floor. Rondo doesn't count as well because he was a one and done. He was just playing for a contract at that point. So if the Kings really, really like Fox and want to make a run at Fox, they're probably going to have to move up.
Yes.
I understand that, and I like that option is there, but I'm hesitant for the exact same reason what we talked about at the beginning of the show, right? If you move up, if you really go all in and try and package 8 and 10 or 7 and 10 to try and move up to 4 or 5 to get Fox, suddenly, if Fox doesn't work out at 4 or 5, it's a horrible, horrible trade, and Vlade's probably gone.
Yes.
So there's a lot of risk, but there's a lot of reward in a lot of ways. So I'm curious, would you consider moving up in this
to get
draft?
Fox? No. Not to get Fox. I've watched a lot of tape on him. I know people get excited about his athleticism, but when you shoot 24.6 from beyond the arc, to me that's like alert. The same, he had a great game against Lonzo Ball in the tournament, and that really put him at the spotlight, right?
Right.
And to me, I'm not going to not draft Lonzo number 1 or 2 because he had a bad game that game. I like consistency, and Lonzo was consistent the entire year. When you shoot 24.6 for the entire season, that scares me, Matt. The last guys to shoot like that was Rajon Rondo, Alfred Payton, and as you guys have seen, Alfred Payton has now worked out, and both of these guys have similar games. The only difference is that one guy's a lefty and one guy is a righty. He's super athletic. He plays good defense, but he's not very good in the pick and roll. He has a lot of deficiency in this game, and I feel like his strengths are not enough for me to move up. But I will say this: he is a likable kid, very well spoken, very smart. But I feel like if he does fall, it really reminds me of that draft when they drafted Ben McLemore. He was supposed to go 2, and he fell to us. That draft, they were going to draft C.J. McCollum. They brought C.J. in twice, and it just happened that Ben McLemore, a big name from Kansas, drops to you. You have to take him, right? And I'm afraid that if Fox does drop, they're going to be forced to take this guy. And to me, it's either he's going to be a star or he's going to be a bust. So like
why wouldn't you say the same thing then about Markkanen? Like if he fell,
Markkanen?
I'm sorry, Markkanen,
because he's an elite shooter already.
But we've seen him be an elite shooter at the college level, right?
Yeah.
You don't have any kind of worry or fear of that translating into the NBA and that struggle being there. So you would feel more uncomfortable with Fox. Fox is projected on most drafts to go either 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Let's just say 5, and Markkanen around 6. So there's only one. I mean, that's only one pick in between each other. If either of those ones slide, you would be more uncomfortable with Fox sliding
correct.
rather than Markkanen.
I would.
It's really just because of...
I just can't justify 25%.
And I get that.
He's an awful shooter, right? And the thing is, when he misses, it's not like a good miss. Like, it won't even give his guys a chance to grab the offensive rebound. It's like an ugly miss.
Right.
And it's either his shot's going to go in or it's going to be an erratic shot. Like, it's crazy.
But Fox certainly has strengths that Markkanen
doesn't.
Obviously doesn't
have.
They're
different players.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Markkanen, he spaces the floor, and like we said, in today's NBA, he is a big that you want to have.
Yes.
Assuming that his game
that guy would
translate
fit on any team.
Well, assuming his game translates to the NBA level. But specifically, where I'm going with this is, I understand what you're saying about you have to take the best available. But
I think Markkanen can be a serviceable player at worst, be a good role player because he has a skill set that everybody wants, which is shooting.
Sure.
With Fox, it's not enough to be just a good defender nowadays. And you know that Rajon Rondo, I mean, before the last month, everybody thought his career was over, and he resurrected. He had a good month of April, and he had a good 2 games.
Right. Well, see, in my mind, the Kings need to get a point guard in this top 10. They need to.
I agree.
So
and they will because 5 of those point guards will go in the top 10. And if they do draft small forward or power forward at 8, say they get 8 and 10, 1 point guard will be available at 10.
And you think it'll be Frank?
It can be Frank or Dennis.
Right. So I tend to lean more towards Dennis because
I get it.
And it's not the international thing that bothers me. I mean, Vlade has obviously
We're
not
gonna have
been
a soccer
afraid.
team, Matt.
Exactly. And
Finland, France, the
Why not?
Bahamas.
Why not?
No, seriously, this team is full of international players.
we might as well go for it. But I'm not holding the fact that
Yeah,
Frank is an
I
international
know.
player over his head. But Dennis Smith, we've at least seen what he can do in a fast-paced system like at NC State.
Agreed.
And in my mind, Dennis is his game.
He's ready to make an impact.
Right. He can translate, especially offensively. He can translate better to the NBA right away, better than Frank can, in my opinion. There's always that fear with international players that they're going to need a little extra push, or they're going to need just that little extra time. Now, I'm not looking at the Kings to make that perennial jump to a playoff team next season. We would like that. That's not my expectation. But I'm tired of seeing picks made by the Kings that in the first year either make a massive impact and then just fall off the cliff like a Tyreek Evans, or make zero impact at all and then are constantly trying to fight an uphill battle for the rest of their career. Vlade needs to somehow find a healthy medium, and I worry that Frank can't necessarily be that.
To be fair about Tyreek, though, we know that he would have been a star if it wasn't for all of his injuries. Like, he's a hell of a basketball player.
In a lot of ways, yes, but you see what happened to him in terms of teams recognized, okay, how do you
he's been injured.
No,
he still is. He just came off a huge injury.
But he wasn't after his rookie year, when he won Rookie of the Year. He didn't have the injuries immediately going into his second season, but his second season, his sophomore season, he struggled a lot right out of the gate. Why? Because teams recognized if you get Tyreek Evans to leave his feet in traffic, he's either going to try and force up a bad layup, which he's made a career out
the
of.
DMC effect also didn't help.
Or he's going to fall and travel. And teams recognize that. And Tyreek, yes, injuries played a part of it, but he hasn't really been able to adapt his game as much as you would like. You can put a lot of that on injuries. I'm not holding that against him. I just worry that there are a lot of players in this draft that are really strong in one particular area.
Correct, I
that
agree
the
with that.
Kings may go after and try and put all their chips in that basket. And if it doesn't work, arguably the best draft that we've seen in a long, long time, the Kings will strike out again, and they just cannot do that this year. They just can't.
I've said this though, in the breakdowns and in the analysis pieces that we do have on the website. No player is perfect, Matt. All these players have deficiencies. They all have things to work on. I just can't. When I'm looking at this draft, there isn't one perfect player because they all have some kind of deficiency. It's either shooting, it's either assisting, it's either rebounding at a higher rate. Marketing, people talk about his rebounding. He's 7 feet tall, but he still averaged over 7 rebounds in college, which is not bad. Like, that's the norm. You know what I mean? Like 7.4, 7.3. They say that he can't move his feet, which is funny because, in all honesty, we can say that about almost every big man coming into the league. They're not very good at first and playing the pick and roll because all these guards are so much faster in the NBA.
Yep.
So to me, it's not fair. And I said this in the video. By year 3, he'll be a lot stronger, a lot faster, with a lot more experience, just like Papa G.
Right.
The speed of the game was way too much for him to handle, right? Coming from Europe. This kid is a European. He played in the FIBA championships. He played at USC, at Arizona last season. I feel like with experience, that's all going to come because he is athletic and he is mobile. So if he does fall, that's my pick. And ideally, I would go with Marketing and with Frank Ntilikina or Dennis Smith.
Okay. Well, there's certainly a lot to look at in that area. I would be it would be bad of me to not mention that we are in studio. Many people have noticed this, whether you're listening over the radio airwaves here at KXVS or whether you're listening in the normal way. We have a lot of people on YouTube. We see you guys. We see your comments. We'll try and get to those as much as we can. We also have just the audio podcast. So many ways to listen to this, and it's great. But what we're doing here is something that we're going to try and do more and more, and continue to build the podcast as much as we can. And we got our guy Dustin in here who's doing a good job bringing us together and really producing everything. I'm a producer at KHDK, so I understand the role that he has and how gloryless, not necessarily the right word, but how thankless the job can be at times. So Dustin has been doing a phenomenal job really putting all of this together. But Dustin's not just a producer, he also is a knowledgeable sports guy as well. So Dustin, you've been hearing us talking back and forth about this Kings draft. You're Vlade Divac. Who are you looking at? Who is your go-to?
My guy is Jonathan Isaac from Florida State.
Okay.
I think you need a small forward, as he said. Rudy Gay, he doesn't want to be in Sacramento no more. He wants a fresh start like he did in Toronto and Memphis. It's just time to basically let somebody else have that reign, and I think a small forward is a perfect fit for this team right now because you have these bunch of young guys up front. And point guard wise, that's the second position I also think you need to fill, because it's somebody like Dennis Smith Jr., who learned under Mark Godfrey at NC State, which I don't know why he was fired after those couple years at NC State. His record went downhill for a couple years there, but he's a great coach. But Dennis Smith Jr., I know the record wasn't bad at NC State, but they're playing in the ACC. So he plays great against great competition. Jonathan Isaac, one of those guys, and play against North Carolina, Duke. So this guy has the big time feels. He's been to the big arenas in the ACC, which is a hard place to play.
18 points a game.
Yeah, 18 points a game, and for a team who it was struggled last year, and their coach basically was fired before the season was over. I think they handled it perfectly. The players did, and you either go Dennis Smith Jr. or Jonathan Isaac. I think not another big guy.
And I can understand the feeling there. Isaac, to me, is interesting because if he's on the board and the Kings pass up on him, in my mind, they have to do so pretty confident that Rudy Gay is in the works. Because without Rudy Gay, they lose Rudy Gay. If he decides to walk, and he still has time to decide, he may very well do that. Certainly, he was going to be doing that until this injury happened. Now we aren't so sure. If he decides to walk, then yes, there is a glaring hole at the small forward position. However, if they feel comfortable, whether it's by talking to him or just if they know something that we don't, and they choose to pass on Jonathan Isaac, then they better be pretty sure that they're going to be getting Rudy Gay back. Again, in my mind,
or they might have to go after Otto Porter and max him out.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's definitely options in free agency.
It's a possibility, though.
We'll definitely talk about. But to me, I wouldn't feel comfortable being the Kings passing up on a draft pick like an Isaac for the hopes of making a splash in free agency. Because as history has shown, free agency is a pit of doom when it comes to the Kings. They just do not attract the shining stars. So I have my doubts and my worries about Isaac just because my heart is so intertwined with if there are good point guards available before that, like just in terms of maybe Fox falling or something of that nature, and I really don't think he will, but Fox is my guy.
Okay.
And you take Isaac over a need that you've needed for so long in that point guard position, they must be pretty sure that Rudy is going to be gone. And I would not like to see them draft Isaac. Yes, he can learn under Rudy, and yes, there's spots for both of them on the roster to some extent. But if they draft Isaac and then keep Rudy Gay, to me, that's an opportunity missed to have gotten a better player either as a power forward center or as a point guard.
Well, it depends if Isaac falls to 8, Matt, and you still have Dennis Smith and Frank on the board, you're going to get 2 of the 3 players. You know what I mean? So to me, it doesn't matter who goes 8 or 10 as long as you get your guys.
Yes.
Like, people have to stop putting too much, I want this guy to go 8. Like, what does it matter if you get both of the guys that you want? And I said this earlier, I would prefer marketing Frank, and in that second round, drafting your small forward, and he goes by the name, and he was the best Pac-12 player, Dylan Brooks from Oregon. I think that guy is ready to make an impact right off the bat. He is a Draymond Green type player. He was the best player in the Pac-12. He's built like a football player. His body is NBA ready, and I think he will make an impact right off the bat.
The last 2 years at Oregon has been the basketball program hasn't seen this in a long time. So it's been interesting under Dana Altman what they're going to do, because they are putting out NBA prospects now, and Brooks is one of those guys. So the next I believe their class is ranked high next year. So it's going to be interesting to see what Oregon. But Brooks, he was a beast in the Pac-12.
So Brooks, Marketing, and Ntilikina would be a perfect draft for me. Period. So, because you get your small forward, you get your power forward, and you get your point guard. So, I mean, that's how I see it.
There's certainly options there. It's natural as a Kings fan to be to approach this draft with a little bit of fear because,
Yeah.
as we've seen, things just haven't worked out for the Kings in the draft for the most part. I mean, yeah, they ended up striking gold with DeMarcus Cousins in the long run. That didn't work out. Willie Cauley-Stein has turned into, I think, a pick that people can be happy with. Scal and Malachi have been working their way up. We just don't know about Papagiannis. I take comfort in knowing that Vlade really hasn't had a bad draft yet. He hasn't made a bad pick yet.
Yeah.
Papagiannis would be probably the one you could make the biggest argument for, but we just don't know about him quite yet. However, like I said in past podcasts, to me, Vlade cannot get away with making this out of nowhere going against the grain pick this year. If there's something available to him that is blatantly, obviously available, like an Isaac or like a Markkanen falling to him or Frank falling to him, he has to make that move. I want Vlade to do things by the book this draft. That being said, and I've said this 100 times as well, every single name that is in the top 10, even Fultz and Ball, unless they flat out decline to come, these guys need to be in a Sacramento gym for a workout. The Kings need to have really everyone expected to be between 1 and 20 in their gym for a workout as legitimate conversation for these two top 10 picks, because the Kings cannot get away with falling in love with a guy that they feel that they can mold. They just can't. They have to go out and get a guy that is expected to be good. And the reason why I say that is if it doesn't work out, then at least we as a whole expected Frank to be good, or we expected Fox to be good, and he didn't end up being good. Everybody in the world had him in their top 10 of their mock draft. So if that's the sword that you want to try and die on, it's a little more respectable, and it makes me feel better both as an analyst and as a fan.
It's interesting that you say that you really want the Kings to work out these guys, right? Because last year, the only guy to work out for them was Baldwin.
Right.
That was projected to go in the lottery.
Right.
But I think bringing on Scott Perry from the Magic as, not the GM, but the guy under Vlade who has a lot of experience in the NBA will really help facilitate the relationships with these agents. Agents just see the Kings as this dysfunctional franchise. I don't want my clients going there, but I think bringing on a guy like Scott Perry will really help. And I think agents see that this team has potential and a lot of young pieces, so it would make sense for their clients to work out in Sacramento, a state-of-the-art facility, a great arena, the best arena, a very loyal fan base. So to me, I'm expecting at least 4 to 5 lottery guys work out in Sacramento.
And it's going to have to be that way.
The Kings, for sure.
The Kings would be making a massive mistake if they don't have these guys at least in their gym.
Correct.
And that's why I say even guys like Fultz and Ball, guys that you don't really expect to get, but still
they won't come though.
Well, if they deny to come, that's not your fault. But you have to at least make the effort to try and get them to come.
Oh, they do, or they did last year. The agents they were like, nope.
Exactly. But Vlade still needs to make that effort. The point is Vlade can't get away with just saying, well, we have no hope to get Fultz or Ball, so let's just. They can't get away with that. If they want to be. If they want to establish themselves, if they want to be taken seriously, even if the agent says, hell no, Sacramento, that place has been, well, I'm still reaching out. I'm still saying, I want your guy. I'm still an NBA franchise. I want to try and get him here. If you say no, that's on you. That's not on me. I tried to make the effort to get you, and you didn't want to come. That's on you. We're going to talk really quickly. We're about to wrap up here, but we want to let you know that if you're looking for NBA autographs, NBA memorabilia, NBA training cards, hoopcats.com has got it all. They also do giveaways on their Instagram page, so make sure you follow them to keep up with all that. You can also visit their online store for more information. It's stores.ebay.com/thehoopcats.
And I do want to say this. They're going to have over 1,000 different Kings cards, the only place in Sacramento to have such a large selection of, autograph cards. The upcoming rookie class, they have it all, guys.
Right. All three of us agree that the draft is extremely important.
Correct.
I mean, it's the anchor of this offseason. However, this draft has a massive effect, in my opinion, on what the Kings are going to be doing in free agency, and vice versa.
Correct.
Free agency could have a massive effect of what they are going to be doing in this draft. That being said, depending upon what picks they want to take, might rely on guys that they feel like they have a legitimate shot at getting in free agency. If they think Rudy Gay is going to leave, and if Jonathan Isaac is available and they decide to pass on him, they must be pretty confident that they can splash a guy like an Otto Porter or a small forward available in free agency. I know you have been really high on trying to go out and get a veteran point guard to bring in. I am not afraid to say I've always been high on Darren Collison.
Okay.
I don't know what he's doing. What he wants to do. In the interview that I had with him, and you can still read that article that I put out on cowboykingdom.com, it's still there. Towards the end of the season, he kept reiterating that playing for a contender is something that he wants to be doing, but he'd not be opposed to returning to Sacramento. So I want to pose the question to the both of you, guys like Darren Collison or Ty Lawson. In your mind, do you consider at all offering them another contract to potentially bring them back to buy you some time if you go out and get a young point guard, or would you rather see them try and go all in and make a splash for a big name in free agency at the point guard position?
I do have, if I had the option between Collison and Lawson, I would go after Lawson. I think his game and how he can penetrate, it really opens up the other players. Obviously, he's not a better scorer than Darren, but I think his game would fit better with what the Kings are trying to do, because they have a bunch of shooting guards, and a guy like Lawson would make their lives so much better. But yeah, I would go after Lawson, and if that doesn't work out, then yeah, I'd go after a guy like Jeff Teague for sure.
Yeah, Ty Lawson, I'd bring him back because simple reason is Mike Conley was in Memphis, Dave Yeager was the coach, and Ty Lawson is kind of like that same kind of game a little bit. Get the ball to the big man, and that's what I think. Darren Collison likes to score a little too much, and I think Ty Lawson would be the perfect fit to bring back cheap and point guard pass first, and that's what I think Dave Yeager wants with some of these big guys.
And Lawson wants to be a starter.
Yeah.
He's been very vocal on his Instagram. He's gone live, and he said, I'm not going to be a backup next year. I'm not going to sign with any team that will put me as a backup.
Yeah.
So he's pretty outspoken about
But that might be him digging his own grave as well, because in a lot of ways, Lawson hasn't done enough to me to show that offensively he can be a starting point guard. What I mean by that is his first step is incredible, right? And his quick hand to get to the basket is insane. And we saw that all year long, and we were salivating from the mouth just watching it. However, when Lawson leaves his feet, he still lacks something that he had in his glory days in Denver that I haven't seen since. Is even though he's a small guy, it's similar to what like Isaiah Thomas has, right? Even when you're that small, when you're going and attacking the big man and attacking the basket, you are fearless, and I am tiny, and I could get crushed here, but I'm still going to put this ball up, and I still believe that I can make it. I have not seen that out of Ty Lawson.
True.
A lot of times he will take that first step and then go look at the rim and realize, I don't want anything to do with this. And then he'll try and kick out. Teams started to pick up on that a little bit more, and they slowed down their rotations on him because he wasn't really making them pay for it. That's what I worry about, whereas Darren Collison, he's not as quick as Lawson, and I will admit that wholeheartedly. I believe he's a better defender than Lawson, or he can be because he's bigger, and he's more offensively gifted. So Collison, that's what makes him more valuable to me. Also, he's a solid team guy. Again, I am biased because I do have that relationship with Collison. Yeah,
Lawson was a great teammate.
But the point is, you would consider either of them, or at least one of them, consider bringing them back rather than just letting basically everybody walk. Are there any other impending free agents on the Kings that you would consider bringing back, or do you just keep the core that you have, let these guys walk, and fill in the other holes later?
I'm definitely going to bring back Anthony Tolliver.
Tolliver, right.
For sure. I'm not bringing back Aaron Aflalo.
Man, I just had a thought. Can you imagine, and I don't want to cut you off because we're really running against the time here, but can you imagine if you had Anthony Tolliver, you re-sign him, bring him back, and then just have him be the veteran to Markkanen? You bring in Markkanen and have Anthony Tolliver just be his vet. I mean, that's about as good of a fit as you can get. So that's certainly something the Kings should strive for. But closing thoughts, Leo, you were saying.
I'm like choking out here. Thank you for being here,
emotional.
Matt. Yeah, thank you for being here, Matt, for making the drive. Thank you, Dustin, for doing a great job. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Lots of fans came in. We had a good turnout. We had like 800 views on Facebook.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's Leo. See, you're just choking Leo up now. You're making him super emotional. Dustin, thank you for for coming out here and making the extra effort for us, brother. We appreciate it.
No problem, Matt.
Awesome, guys. So that's going to do it. We're going to wrap it up. If you like this new format, please let us know. As usual, we love your comments. We love your feedback. We want you to join the conversation, so do it. Whether you're a podcast listener, you're watching it live, you're listening to it on the radio, there's so many ways to get a hold of us, whether it's on Twitter, at MattGeorgeKHDK, at BeasLeo, at Cowbell Kingdom, Instagram, Facebook. We literally see it all. You like this new format? You don't like it? What do you want to see? What do you not want to see? What do you want us to talk about? As we approach this off season, there's not just games every day for us to talk about, so we can expand our conversations a little bit. So we want to hear from you from that. But for my partner Leo Beas and our producer Dustin, my name is Matt George. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on this new format. This has been the Cowbell Kingdom podcast, live from KXVS in Stockton, also on cowbellkingdom.com, on YouTube, on Facebook. Geez, we're probably on MySpace. I don't even know. But have a good night, everybody. Have a good night. The word of the night, Leo, fun.
With Matt George
Says that we are live. So we are live.
and Leo Beas.
Cowbell Kingdom's podcast.
Here's Matt and Leo.